The grand hall of the Galactic Conference Center sparkled like a sea of stars. Beings from 200 different worlds filled the massive chamber, their forms as varied as the planets they called home. Some floated in anti-gravity pods, others walked on multiple legs, and a few existed as pure energy contained in special suits. Tom Baker stood at the entrance, straightening his plain black tie. He was the only human in the room, and his simple blue suit looked out of place among the shimmering robes and bioengineered clothing of the other representatives. But he held his head high, proud to represent Earth at this crucial meeting. "The emergency session will now begin," announced the council leader, a tall being with silver skin who stood at the central podium. "We face a crisis that threatens multiple populated sectors." The massive display screen behind the podium activated, showing a cluster of asteroids moving through space. Red lines mark their trajectory, intersecting with several populated star systems. "These asteroids will strike inhabited worlds in exactly 30 days, the council leader continued. "The combined mass is larger than anything we have faced before." The chamber erupted in worried murmurs. Representatives from the threatened sectors stood up, demanding immediate action. The Builder Empire's representative, covered in gleaming golden scales, stepped forward. "We propose using our energy shields. A network of shield generators could deflect the entire cluster." The minds, beings of pure thought who had abandoned physical forms millennia ago, offered their solution next. "Our gravity manipulation technology can alter the asteroid's course. We have run 10 million simulations." Tom Baker listened quietly, making notes on his old-fashioned paper notebook. When he finally raised his hand to speak, several representatives turned to stare. Some didn't bother hiding their amused expressions. "The representative from Earth may speak," the council leader announced, though his tone suggested he was only doing this out of politeness. Tom walked to the center of the chamber. He could feel the weight of hundreds of eyes, all belonging to beings who considered humans barely more than clever animals. Earth had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago, while some of these species had been spacefaring for millions of years. "Earth proposes a direct approach," Tom said, his voice clear and confident. "We can stop the asteroids using controlled nuclear detonations at specific points. Our calculations show this would safely alter their course without risking fragmentation." The chamber was silent for a moment. Then laughter erupted from multiple sections. The Builder representative's scales shifted to a pattern that indicated amusement and disbelief. "Nuclear devices," the Builder said. "That's Stone Age technology. We haven't used such crude tools in a million years." The Mind representative's voice echoed in everyone's thoughts. "The human proposal has a 78% chance of making the situation worse. Their understanding of cosmic mechanics is primitive at best." Tom stood his ground. "With respect," he said, keeping his voice steady, "humans have been dealing with dangerous materials in space for over a century. We may be new to the galactic community, but we have extensive experience in mining operations and asteroid deflection in our home system. This is not some small rock near your moon," the council leader said. "This is a cluster of asteroids massive enough to destroy whole worlds. We need real solutions, not outdated explosives." But Tom wasn't finished. He pulled out a data chip and inserted it into the display system. Detailed simulations appeared, showing exactly how the human plan would work. "We've run our own calculations. The nuclear option is cheaper, faster, and has a higher chance of success than energy shields or gravity manipulation. We're willing to prove it." The laughter had died down now, replaced by dismissive mutters. The council leader raised his hand for silence. "The council has heard Earth's interesting proposal. However, we will proceed with testing the shield network and gravity manipulation options first. This session is adjourned." As the representatives filed out, many throwing amused glances his way, Tom packed up his notebook. He wasn't surprised by their reaction, but he knew humanity's history. They worked best when everyone else thought they would fail. He had one more card to play, and he was already composing the message to Earth in his head. If the council wouldn't listen, maybe it was time for humans to take matters into their own hands. Captain Jane Wilson stood at the window of Earth's orbital station, watching the construction of her fleet. Unlike the sleek, artistic ships used by other species, these vessels were bulky and practical. Their dark metal hulls were covered in heat shields and reinforced plates. They looked like what they were, working ships built for a dangerous job. "They're calling us crazy down at the council," Tom Baker said, walking up beside her. He had just returned from another frustrating meeting. The Builder's Shield network failed their first test. The asteroids just pushed right through it. Jane nodded, her eyes fixed on the ships. "And the mine's gravity machines split one of the smaller asteroids into 3 pieces, made things worse." Tom handed her a tablet showing the latest images. "We have 2 weeks before the asteroids reach the first populated system. Then it's time we stopped asking for permission." Jane turned from the window, walking to the station's main control room. Dozens of human operators sat at their stations, monitoring screens and checking equipment. They were the best Earth had to offer: miners, engineers, demolition experts, and space pilots. "The council officially refused our help this morning," Tom announced to the room. "They say our plan is too dangerous." Engineer Mike Smith looked up from his workstation, his hands covered in grease from testing equipment. "Too dangerous compared to what?" "Those fancy shields that didn't work." "We're going anyway," Jane said, bringing up the mission details on the main screen. "Earth Command has given us the green light. If we succeed, they can't complain. If we fail," she shrugged, "we'll be no worse off than we are now." The room burst into activity. This was what they had trained for. While other species relied on AI and automated systems, humans still believed in hands-on work. Each person here knew their job inside and out. "We've modified the nuclear devices," Mike explained, pulling up the technical specs. "They're not just bombs. We've adjusted them to direct most of the force in specific directions, like shake charges, but on a massive scale." The next few hours were filled with final preparations. The fleet of 12 ships was loaded with equipment, supplies, and the specially designed nuclear devices. Each ship looked rough and unfinished compared to alien vessels, but every piece of equipment had been tested and retested. "Message from the council," Tom called out, reading from his screen. "They're demanding we stand down. They say we'll only make things worse." Jane watched her crew boarding the ships through the observation window. "Send them our flight plan. Tell them we're not asking for help or permission. We're just letting them know where we'll be, in case they want to watch." The council's response was quick and angry. They threatened sanctions, trade restrictions, even removing Earth from the galactic community. Jane read their messages with a calm expression. "Tell them we accept all consequences," she said to Tom. "After we save their worlds, they can punish us however they want." The launch countdown began. Jane walked to her ship, the largest of the fleet. Its name was painted on the hull in simple white letters. Hope. Not an elegant name like alien ships had, but it said everything it needed to. "All ships report ready," called the flight controller. "Council vessels are moving to block our exit vector." Jane sat in her captain's chair, buckling in. "Send to all ships. Launch now. Push through but don't damage their vessels. Show them what human pilots can do." The human fleet lifted off as one, their engines burning bright against the darkness of space. Alien ships moved to intercept them, expecting the humans to stop or turn back. They didn't know much about humans. Jane's voice was calm as she gave the order. "Full burn. Thread the needle between their ships. Let's show them how Earth gets things done." The human ships accelerated, their formation tight and precise. They wove between the alien vessels with surprising grace, like dancers performing a well-practiced routine. The aliens, expecting clumsy evasions from primitive ships, were caught off guard by the human skill. Within minutes, the fleet was clear of Earth orbit, headed for the asteroid cluster at full speed. Behind them, the alien ships hung motionless, their crews probably still trying to understand how they'd been outmaneuvered by primitive pilots. Now, Jane said to her crew, "Let's go save some worlds, whether they want us to or not." 3 days into their journey, engineer Mike Smith floated in zero gravity beside his latest invention. The drilling machine filled most of the cargo bay, its tungsten-tipped drill bits gleaming under the work lights. It wasn't pretty. Pipes and cables stuck out at odd angles, and most of its surface was covered in thick protective plating. But it was exactly what they needed. "How's our baby looking?" Captain Jane Wilson asked, pulling herself into the cargo bay using the handholds along the wall. "She's ready," Mike said, patting the machine's hull. "We've tested her in every way we can without actual asteroid rock. The drill bits are designed to handle anything from iron nickel to solid diamond." Their conversation was interrupted by the ship's communication system. "Captain, we're being followed," the radar operator reported. "3 alien ships, keeping their distance but definitely tracking us." Jane wasn't surprised. "Let them watch. Maybe they'll learn something." She turned back to Mike. "How many of these drilling units did we bring?" "1 for each ship," Mike answered, pushing off the machine to float toward his tool station. "Each one can drill up to 200 meters deep, more than enough to plant the nuclear devices exactly where we need them." The next few hours were spent running final checks on all systems. The human fleet moved through space in a tight formation, their engines running at full power. Unlike the smooth, silent drives of alien ships, these engines rumbled and shook, pushing the vessels forward through sheer force. "Message incoming," the communications officer announced. "It's from the builders." Jane nodded. "Put it through." A holographic image appeared, showing the golden-scaled builder representative. "Captain Wilson, your actions are reckless and unauthorized. Turn back now, and the council might show leniency." "With respect," Jane replied. "We can see the asteroid cluster on our long-range sensors. Your shield network failed. The mine's gravity manipulation made things worse. We're the only ones left with a plan that might work." "Your plan is primitive. Those drills, those nuclear devices, they're ancient technology." Mike floated forward into view of the communication system. "Sometimes old tools are the best tools. We've been drilling holes and blowing things up for centuries. We know exactly what we're doing." The builder's scales shifted in a pattern that suggested both anger and disbelief. "You'll destroy yourselves and make the situation even more dangerous." "Maybe," Jane admitted, "but doing nothing definitely means those worlds die. We choose to try." She cut the transmission and turned to her crew. "Status report. Asteroid cluster is now visible to normal cameras," the sensor operator reported. Size estimates were correct. The main body is roughly the size of Earth's moon. The crew gathered around the main viewing screen. The asteroid cluster looked like a mountain range floating in space, chunks of rock ranging from the size of buildings to the size of small moons. They tumbled slowly, their surfaces scarred and cratered from countless collisions. "There's our target," Mike said, pointing to one of the larger asteroids. "If we can alter that one's course by just a few degrees, the whole cluster will follow." Jane studied the image. Other species saw a problem too big to solve with primitive tools. She saw a job that needed doing, no different from the asteroid mining operations humans had been running for decades. "Message from the alien ships," the communications officer reported. "They're offering to escort us back to Earth. They say we're about to commit suicide." "Tell them thanks, but no thanks," Jane replied. She opened a channel to the rest of the human fleet. "All ships, this is Captain Wilson. In 10 hours, we'll be in position to begin drilling. Every calculation, every test, every simulation says this will work. But we all know numbers aren't everything. This is going to come down to skill, nerve, and the kind of determination that Earth is famous for." She paused, looking at her crew's faces. None showed fear, only focus and readiness. "They called us primitive. They laughed at our methods. Let's show them what primitive humans can do. Prepare for deceleration and approach. It's time to save some worlds. Behind them, the alien ships continued to watch and record, about to witness something they never expected. Humanity's finest hour. The surface of the asteroid filled the viewing screens, a landscape of jagged rock and deep shadows. Captain Jane Wilson's ship, Hope, led the human fleet into position, their engines firing in short, controlled bursts to match the asteroid's slow tumble. Surface analysis complete, the sensor operator reported. Composition is mostly iron and nickel, with some ice mixed in, just like our mining operations back home. The alien ships that had followed them hung back at a safe distance. Their sensors were no doubt recording everything, waiting to document either humanity's greatest achievement or their most spectacular failure. All ships, report status. Jane called over the fleet channel. One by one, the other 11 ships responded. Their drilling machines were ready. The nuclear devices were armed and prepared for placement. Years of asteroid mining experience had prepared them for this moment. Begin approach sequence, Jane ordered. Remember your training. This is just like mining operations back home, just on a bigger scale. The fleet split into their assigned groups, each ship moving to its designated drilling site. These locations had been carefully chosen, the weak points in the asteroid's structure where their nuclear devices would have the most effect. First drilling team, you have the honor, Jane said. Show them how Earth does it. The first ship descended toward the asteroid's surface. Unlike the elegant landing systems of alien ships, this was pure human engineering. Sturdy landing legs, powerful thrusters, and skilled pilots who knew exactly what they were doing. Magnetic clamps engaged, anchoring the ship to the asteroid's iron-rich surface. The drilling machine emerged from its cargo bay, its massive drill bit gleaming in the starlight. Beginning drill sequence, the first team reported. Depth meter reading normal. Rotation speed optimal. The drill bit touched the asteroid's surface and began to spin. Dark rock chips flew into space as the drill bored deeper and deeper. Other ships began their descents, each picking their spots with careful precision. Alien ships are broadcasting again, communications reported. They're demanding we stop. They say the vibrations from our drills could split the asteroid. Send them our calculations again, Jane replied. And remind them their own attempt already split one asteroid. We know what we're doing. The drilling continued. Hour after hour, the machines worked their way deeper into the asteroid's core. The whole fleet worked as one team, each ship reporting their progress, each drill reaching its assigned depth. First team reports ready for package placement. Came the call everyone had been waiting for. Drill has reached target depth of 180 meters. Jane leaned forward in her chair. This was the crucial moment. Begin nuclear device placement. Remember, slow and steady. No mistakes. The first team's drilling machine carefully lowered its payload, a specially designed nuclear device, built to direct its force in exactly the right direction. The device reached the bottom of the shaft, and the team began the process of securing it in place. Second team reports ready for placement. Another call came in. Third team approaching target depth. One by one, the ships reported success. Each nuclear device was placed exactly where it needed to be, deep within the asteroid's structure. The drilling machines were retracted, their job complete. All ships, prepare for withdrawal to safe distance, Jane ordered. Detonation sequence is set for 1 hour from my mark. As the fleet pulled back, their engines glowing against the darkness, the alien ships moved closer to get a better view. Their disbelief was almost palpable. These primitive humans had actually done it. They had drilled into the asteroid and planted their explosives, just as they said they would. Jane opened a channel to all ships, including the alien vessels. In 1 hour, we'll show you why humans never gave up on the basics. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. The countdown began. The human fleet moved to their calculated safe distance, their ships oriented to protect vital systems from the blast. On their screens, the asteroid cluster continued its deadly tumble through space, unaware that humanity was about to change its course forever. "Mark," Jane said quietly, "1 hour to detonation. Let's make history." 40 minutes into the countdown, everything went wrong. "Captain," Engineer Mike Smith's voice crackled over the emergency channel. "We're getting strange readings from Device 3. The detonator signal isn't responding correctly." Captain Jane Wilson's hands tightened on her armrests. If even one device failed to detonate properly, the entire mission could fail. "Can you fix it?" "Not from here," Mike replied. "Someone needs to go back." The alien ships monitoring them must have detected the problem. Their communication channel lit up immediately. "Human vessels, we detect a malfunction in your primitive devices. Withdraw now before you cause a disaster." Jane ignored them. "How long to fix it?" 10 minutes of work, but with approach and departure time. Mike's voice trailed off. They all knew what he meant. It would be cutting it incredibly close to the detonation time. "I'll go," said Robert Cooper, their best pilot. "I can get a ship there faster than anyone else." Jane studied the countdown timer. 35 minutes remaining. The asteroid loomed on their screens, slowly rotating. Device 3 was planted on its far side, meaning they'd have to navigate around the massive rock to reach it. "It's too risky," the builder representative transmitted. "Your ships are too primitive for such precise maneuvering. You'll crash into the asteroid." Robert was already heading for his ship. "Captain, request permission to proceed." "I can do this." Jane made her decision. "Permission granted. Mike, you're with him. Get that device working." Their ship, the smallest in the fleet, detached from the formation. Robert's hands flew over the controls, firing thrusters in quick, precise bursts. The ship shot toward the asteroid like an arrow. 25 minutes to detonation, the computer announced calmly. The alien ships moved closer to watch. They'd never seen a human pilot perform under pressure like this. Robert threaded his ship through the debris field around the asteroid, using the chunks of rock to slingshot his vessel faster toward their target. "Approaching Device 3's location," Robert reported. His voice was steady, focused. "Beginning final approach." The ship's landing feet touched down on the asteroid's surface with a gentle tap. Mike was already suited up, the repair kit clutched in his hands. He pushed off toward the airlock. 15 minutes to detonation. Mike reached the drill shaft, his magnetic boots keeping him anchored to the surface. He had to work in the dark shadow of the asteroid, with only his helmet lights to see by. "Reading the device's circuits now," Mike reported. "The primary detonator circuit is damaged. Switching to backup." 10 minutes to detonation. Jane watched from the fleet's position as Robert kept the ship perfectly steady on the asteroid's rotating surface, compensating for the movement with tiny thruster adjustments. One wrong move would send them tumbling into space. "Circuit replaced," Mike called out. "Running diagnostic. Detonator is responding. We're back in business." 7 minutes to detonation. "Get out of there," Jane ordered. "Both of you, right now." Mike pushed off from the surface, flying back toward the ship. Robert had already started the engines, keeping them at minimal power to maintain their position. 4 minutes to detonation. The airlock cycled shut behind Mike. Robert didn't wait for confirmation. He fired the engines at full power, lifting off the asteroid's surface. The ship shot away from the rock face, engines straining. 2 minutes to detonation. "They'll never clear the blast radius in time," the builder representative transmitted. "Their engines are too weak." But Robert wasn't flying straight out. Instead, he swung the ship around the asteroid's curve, using its gravity to add to their speed. The maneuver was incredibly dangerous. One slight miscalculation would slam them into the rock face. 30 seconds to detonation. The ship cleared the asteroid's edge, now shooting straight toward the fleet. Robert fired the engines beyond their rated capacity, pushing the ship to its absolute limit. 10 seconds. 9. 8. "Brace for impact," Jane shouted to all ships. They had no idea if Robert and Mike would make it to safe distance in time. The countdown continued, and 12 billion lives hung in the balance. 5, 4, 3. Robert's ship streaked across space, engines glowing white-hot from the strain. They were still not at safe distance. 2, 1. All ships, emergency shields. Captain Jane Wilson commanded. Prepare for radiation burst. The asteroid's surface erupted in 12 perfectly synchronized explosions. Each nuclear device detonated exactly as planned, their combined force directed into the rock, like massive hammers striking at precise angles. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. The asteroid continued its slow tumble through space. The alien ships began transmitting messages about human failure. Then they saw it. Cracks appeared across the asteroid's surface, spreading like spider webs. But they weren't breaking it apart. They were following the exact patterns Mike had calculated. The entire massive rock was shifting, its course beginning to change. Robert's ship is clear, someone shouted. Their small vessel had just made it past the safety line, its engines finally giving out from the strain. The real show was just beginning. The asteroid's newly formed cracks glowed red-hot from the nuclear explosions. Pieces of its surface broke free and spiraled away into space, but the main body stayed intact. Most importantly, it was moving in a new direction. Tracking computers online, the sensor operator reported, calculating new trajectory. Everyone held their breath. This was the moment that would prove whether humans were right or wrong, whether their primitive solution would succeed where advanced alien technology had failed. The computer beeped. Numbers flashed across the screen. Course change confirmed. The sensor operator shouted, unable to contain their excitement. Deviation is exactly 3.2 degrees from original path. That's perfect. It's exactly what we calculated. The asteroid cluster was already visibly moving along its new course. The force of the nuclear explosions had acted like a giant steering rocket, pushing the massive rock onto a path that would miss the populated systems entirely. Impossible, came the builder representative's voice. Your primitive explosives actually worked. The mines sent their own calculations, their pure energy forms flickering with what might have been surprise. The trajectory change is optimal. No fragmentation. No secondary threats created. They did it. Jane opened a channel to Robert's ship. Good work out there. How's your ship holding up? Engines are fried, Robert replied cheerfully. We'll need a tow home. But Mike says we can rebuild them better than new. The sensor data kept coming in. The asteroid cluster was now fully committed to its new course. In a few hours, it would be clear of all populated systems. 12 billion lives were no longer in danger. Attention human fleet, the council leader's voice came through, formal and slightly stiff. The council acknowledges your success. Your methods, while unorthodox, have proven effective. Thank you, Jane replied simply. She opened a channel to her fleet. All ships begin recovery operations. Let's pick up our salvageable drilling machines and get ready for the journey home. The human ships moved with practiced efficiency, retrieving their equipment where possible. Some of the drilling machines were lost, destroyed by the explosions, but most had survived. Built tough, just like everything else humans made. Captain, communications called out. We're getting messages from the planets that were in the asteroid's path. They're thanking us. All of them. Jane smiled. Send them this response. Just doing our job. Signed, Humanity. The alien ships began to move closer, their crews probably bursting with questions about how the humans had calculated everything so precisely, about how they had known exactly where to place the charges, exactly how much force to use. But the humans were already busy with their work. Robert's ship was being towed by one of their larger vessels. Teams were checking the recovered drilling machines for damage. Engineers were making notes about improvements for next time. Because there would be a next time. Somewhere out there, someone would need help. And humans would be ready, with their primitive tools and their determination to get the job done. The aliens had witnessed something today that they didn't quite understand yet. Sometimes the simplest solution was the best solution, and nobody did simple better than humans. 1 week after the asteroid incident, the Grand Hall of the Galactic Council looked very different. The usual chatter and movement had been replaced by attentive silence. Every representative leaned forward in their seats, watching as Captain Jane Wilson and her crew stood at the center of the chamber. "This emergency session of the council will now begin," the council leader announced. His silver skin seemed less shiny than usual, perhaps humbled by recent events. "We are here to discuss the actions of the human fleet and their successful intervention." Tom Baker stood with Jane's crew, his simple blue suit still standing out among the elaborate alien clothing. But this time, no one was laughing. "The data is clear," the builder representative said, his golden scales arranged in a pattern of respectful attention. "The human solution was completely successful. The asteroid cluster will miss all populated systems by a safe margin of over 1 million kilometers." The minds added their analysis, their energy forms pulsing steadily. "We have studied their calculations and methods. While nuclear devices are indeed primitive technology, the humans' understanding of how to use them was masterful." Engineer Mike Smith stood next to a holographic display, showing the exact details of their mission. His hands were clean today, but there were still smudges of grease on his work boots. "The drilling machines were based on standard mining equipment," Mike explained to the council. "We've been using similar tools in our asteroid mining operations for decades. Sometimes the old ways work best." Pilot Robert Cooper stepped forward next. The council had specifically requested to hear from the human who had pulled off the impossible rescue flight. "About that last-minute fix," Robert said, his voice matter-of-fact. "It was just like landing a shuttle in bad weather. You trust your training, trust your ship, and get the job done." The council leader raised his hand for attention. "The council has reached a unanimous decision. Earth's actions, while unauthorized, saved billions of lives. More importantly, they have shown us something we had forgotten." He paused, looking around the chamber. "In our rush to develop new technologies, we often overlook the simple solutions. The humans reminded us that innovation isn't always about creating something new. Sometimes it's about using what you have in clever ways. Therefore," he continued, "the council hereby establishes a new emergency response division. It will be led by Earth specialists, who will train other species in their practical approach to problem solving." Jane stepped forward. "We'd be honored to share what we know, but we hope you understand. We'll keep doing things our way. No fancy shields or gravity machines, just solid engineering and determination. We would expect nothing less," the council leader replied. A hint of amusement crept into his voice. "Though perhaps we could provide some improvements to your ship's engines, to prevent them from burning out during emergency maneuvers." Robert grinned. "Only if we get to test them our way first. We like to know our equipment will work when it matters." The chamber filled with appreciative laughter, not mockery this time, but genuine respect. The human crew stood tall, proud but not boastful. They had proven themselves not by arguing or demanding respect, but by simply doing what humans did best: solving problems. As the session ended, representatives from various worlds approached the humans, asking questions about their methods and technology. The builders were particularly interested in the drilling machines, while the minds wanted to study human emergency response protocols. Tom Baker watched it all with satisfaction. "Not bad for a bunch of primitives," he said quietly to Jane. "We're not primitive," Jane replied, watching her crew interact with the alien representatives. "We're practical." And today, the galaxy learned that practical works. Outside the council chamber, the news was spreading across the galaxy. Humans, the newcomers who had been laughed at and dismissed, had succeeded where the most advanced civilizations had failed. They had done it not with theoretical physics or advanced energy manipulation, but with drills, bombs, and raw courage. Nobody was laughing now. Instead, they were asking a new question. What would these remarkable humans do next? The answer, of course, was simple: whatever needed to be done.